Hey, I have a second channel. Cube Compium DDX. Hey everybody. So here we have the next door neighbor's desktop PC in for service. The reason why it's here is due to performance. This is a little something I threw together for them at least a few years ago. It's been a while. So let's go ahead and have a look inside. It's an E-Machines case, but it has a HP OEM board with a Pentium D processor. It's not an 820, it's actually a little bit better than the 820, but still nonetheless it's a Pentium D, so we know it is a space heater that does not perform very well. So the thing is, when I put this thing together a few years back, I mean, we're talking back in the earlier Windows 10 era, it was a lot faster than it is now. And one big reason is the simple fact that Windows 10 has simply gotten more and more bloated with time. For example, Windows 10 1507 through Windows 10 1709, those builds would run relatively snappy on stuff, even down to, like, for example, AMD Socket 754 or 939. And I'm talking 32-bit because you couldn't run 64-bit on those. But yeah, the older Windows 10 builds would actually run pretty well on that. I mean, considering the fact that the hardware was so old. But once we started getting to 1803, 1809, 1903, 1909, 2004 and 20H2, and then of course you get the idea. The more modern Windows 10 builds, they just got much more bloated. And to be honest, I think like the most modern Windows 10 is just about as bloated as Windows 11 in a way. But anyways, so this computer, they don't hardly use it anymore because, well, the thing's so blasted slow. So we're going to put something a little bit better in there. It's not going to be super high end, but it's going to serve their needs perfectly fine for what they use it for. Primarily, they just use it to pay bills and stuff like that. And they use, I think they got a laptop, and I think they also got like a tablet and a phone they use for just general stuff. And so, if we have a look, I think this system has, I see a 2 GB stick and a 1 GB stick of DDR2, so 3 GB of memory, Pentium D processor, hard drive of questionable size. Got a video card in there, probably because the onboard graphics were just absolutely terrible. Not sure what card that is. I'd have to pull it out, more likely to see for sure. But yeah, that motherboard in there is actually an ECS manufacturer board. I can tell by the writing on it. This computer, the last time I seen it was I had brought it over for a general servicing, and the power supply blew up on me. It was one of these Bestech HCX 312E units that had the glue gone rogue. So I pulled it and I replaced it with another off-the-shelf HCX 312E, and lo and behold, this one is starting to have the glue go rogue. This one has not blown up yet, but I'm going to have to pull this unit and I'm going to have to deal with that glue, and I may cover that in a later video. Not sure if you can see through here or not, but I'm looking at the the 5-volt standby auxiliary transformer, and I see a good bit of dark brown goo on the side of it, which is a telltale sign. These HCX 312E units, they have a 5-volt standby switcher IC that's right next to the transformer, and many of these units, the ones that had the glue of death, the tan glue of death, if that glue was actually shot onto that IC during assembly, that IC gets hot, so you know what happens from there. I've got several videos up on the channel covering that. I got 2 videos repairing these things. And I got a Bestech 312Z over here that needs a cap job, and also has to have the glue dealt with. Anyways, I'm going to pull this power supply and change it out for one of my repaired 312E units up there, and we'll start this thing up and give it a little go, see what's going on with it. Okay, so I got the power supply swapped out for another identical unit, except this one has been deglued and recapped, so it's good to go. I got it just kind of thrown in there now for now because I'm going to be pulling that motherboard, CPU, memory, and video card out of there here in just a bit. But let's go ahead and start it up and see what we currently have. There we are. You can see it's booting up Windows 10. Now, if there's any personal information there, I'll have to, of course, censor it. And of course, yeah, this thing is taking its sweet time booting up. We can say that. Slow hard drive. I'm telling you guys, Microsoft ought to just make the solid state drive a minimum requirement for newer builds of Windows 10 as well as Windows 11 in general. Okay, so we got our desktop. So that's good. And I can hear that heatsink fan ramping up because we know that Pentium D is just cranking out that heat. So let's go ahead and pull up system properties. Oh yeah, very unresponsive. Although I have seen worse. Just FYI, this will be part of the upgrade this thing gets. Drop a SSD in there. Okay, so here's what we currently have. We have a Pentium D CPU, 3 GHz, with 3 GB of RAM installed. So yeah, pretty dated specifications for sure. Now let's see what build of Windows 10 we're running here. 2004. So yeah, we'll definitely need to get that updated to a newer build of Windows 10 for sure. That's probably why this thing isn't exactly unusable. I mean, it's slow, but it's not terrible. I mean, I've seen much worse. Much worse. So that's probably the reason why this thing is still usable, is the fact that it's running a nearly 3-year-old build of Windows 10. So we're definitely going to have to get the Windows 10 updated to a newer build. So we're going to be pulling this motherboard out and changing it out for something a little bit better. I got an AMD Athlon II, I think it's a 240E or something like that, 245E, something like that, with I think 4 GB of RAM. It's actually similar to the motherboard that's on the QQ Plexi. It's actually an OEM Asus motherboard from an Asus CM1630 tower system. So I'll be getting that and be dropping that in this thing. Okay, so I've got this thing unplugged again. Now let's go ahead and start disconnecting cables. Get this video card out of here for one thing. And we'll get this motherboard pulled out along with the CPU and memory. And I'll drop in the replacement board that I have. It already has a CPU and RAM installed. I may start out with just the onboard graphics on that board. I may throw in a GeForce 210 graphics card. I have a few of those kicking around. That way the graphics won't be absolutely terrible. And I'll be pulling this hard drive out of here, cloning the data over to an SSD, dropping that back in here, and go from there. You know, I never did actually look and see what model graphics card this is, but I'm pretty sure it's not that great. Just put it to the side for now. Okay, so I got the board pulled out. And here is a look at the old motherboard. Okay, so here's the motherboard we're going to be putting in this thing. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a Asus CM1630 OEM board. That's the model of the desktop tower that this went in. Now if you look, you can see it's an M4A78LT. However, this is an OEM board. This motherboard is almost identical to the Asus. Where is it? It's probably on the video card. M4A88T-M motherboard. So this motherboard here, that's on the QQ Plexi, is practically identical. So I'm going to have to install this motherboard without an IO shield plate on the back because, well, the eBay seller who sold me this motherboard here failed to include the IO shield plate. So the IO shield plate for this motherboard is actually on the QQ Plexi. Therefore, we're going to have to install this motherboard without the IO shield plate. Not too big of a deal. I mean, the motherboard that was in this thing was also missing the IO shield plate. Probably because of a very similar reason. I do keep spares of these IO shield plates, however none of my spares lined up with all the connections on this motherboard, so we're having to install it as is. So it should be a pretty straightforward drop-in install. I'll go ahead and fasten everything back into place. Okay, so we got the motherboard secured into place. Now, one thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to modify this power LED connection because Asus, in their brilliant minds, decided to have the leads for this spaced out as a header of 3 instead of a header of 2. Now, the correct way would be to find a header that has the 3 spacing rather than the 2 spacing, but I'm going to cheat just a little bit with this one. I'm just going to take the pair of cutters and just chomp it right in half. Just like that. At least this is an E-Machines chassis, so the all these connections are separate, unlike most when they're bundled together like this USB header. I had to actually rig up an adapter for the QQ Plexi, and I did that using the original case, wiring from the case that this motherboard came from. Okay, so apparently this motherboard, I had taken the memory off for something else. So I'm going to have to grab me some memory to throw on this thing. Which I got some extra memory available for that. Okay, so I got 4 gigabytes of DDR3 memory here. Just going to pop it into these slots back here. Not sure if this is seen on video or not. Okay, so we'll go ahead and continue hooking up cables. Okay, so as I was beginning to start plugging in cables, I noticed this motherboard does not offer a parallel HCA interface or an ID interface. Right there, under that sticker, is where it would go. If you look over here at the QQ Plexi, you'll see it's right there next to the power supply connection. So, what that means is I'm going to pull these ID optical drives out of here because we're going to have to replace them with the SATA equivalent. And I'm not going to go with 2 optical drives in this machine. I mean, I'm going to replace them with SATA drives because I've only got a handful of them back there. Most of those are actually IDE. But I'm going to have to yank these out and change them out for a SATA optical drive. Okay, so we have a SATA DVD-ROM drive that we can install back into place. Gotta get this one screw out though. Pop that into the lower bay. And the reason is because on these Z-Machine systems, they don't have provision for screws, you know, for the faceplate of the drive to stick out at the same amount as the rest of the front bezel. Now, the alternative option would be to try to harvest the faceplates off of this drive and swap it over to the other one. I mean, it's possible, but generally you gotta have matching drive brands, and that's not the case here. This one's an HL data storage from 2004, and the one that's in there, can't really see what the brand is, but it's from January 2012. Now, the year manufacturer doesn't always make a big deal, but still, you gotta have the same brand, because these faceplates were custom designed for the specific brands, either by the drive OEM or by E-Machines, probably by the drive OEM, who knows. So, I've got a E-Machines silver plate. I'm going to have to try to fit in there. May end up having to glue it in there. You can see I got glue on this one already from probably a previous installation. So I'll probably end up figuring that out off camera. It's just a matter of plugging everything back in. Okay, so I'm going to pull this hard drive out of here, and let's go ahead and do a drive-to-drive clone. We're going to clone this drive, and so we're going to be cloning this over to an SSD. So, shouldn't be an issue. It's a matter of fact, the hard drive is in here is a 250 gigabytes. So, yeah, going from a 250 gig hard drive to a 240 gig SSD should not be an issue. So we can choose between the Silicon Power A55 or the PNY CS900 SSD. So the SSD we're going to use for this is this Silicon Power 256 gigabyte SSD. I thought it was a 240, but it's actually a 256 gig. So I ended up with this because I was buying something on Amazon. I needed it here in a big hurry, and it was that deal of get free same day shipping if you spend $35 or more. So I tacked on this $20 SSD. So knowing I would eventually use it for something. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and plug up the existing hard drive to the Plexi and plug up this new SSD, and I'm going to off camera do a data partition copy over to it. Okay everybody, so now that we've gotten the data copied over to our new SSD, now we just need to go ahead and get this installed into the hard drive cage. So first we got to take the hard drive out. Okay, so there's the existing hard drive. What we need to do now is install the 2.5-inch SSD into a 2.5-inch to 3.5-inch drive bay adapter. You can get these super cheap now on Amazon, but do be wary working with these because some of the cheap ones do have sharp edges, and you could cut yourself if you're not careful. Now, while you might need a band-aid after working with some of these products, at least they did provide screws. Okay, so now we'll just go ahead and reinstall this back into the drive cage. Alright, now we're going to reinstall this drive cage. And we'll just reroute our cables back in for our power and our SATA connection. Okay everybody, so I got the SSD installed as well as the newer motherboard in CPU and RAM, and it's up and running now. But here's something really odd. So you seen earlier how we were running Windows 10 version 20.04, right? But what's weird, I mean literally all I did was I migrated the data off of the existing hard drive, which is right here, migrated that data over to that 256 gigabyte SSD and installed it into the system. Did not have to do any like reinstallation of Windows 10 or anything like that. It just picked it right up and it's up and running. But when I go into settings and go to system, and look at the About tab, or the About section, it says we are running 21H2. That is interesting. I don't know if this thing was in the process of getting ready to install a feature update. Like, I don't understand it, guys. It's really a weird one. I do recall when I started this thing up, it says something like updating your system. I don't know. It was, but normally you would think that doing a platform upgrade would take a long time, and it usually does. The one exception I remember was it was a 1909 was a quick one, and I think 22H2 is also a quick one if you already have 20H2 or a newer build installed. So that was really interesting. So yeah, at some point the thing just freaking went to 21H2. So I'm going to actually upgrade this to 22H2. That, I mean, since I have it with me. But I mean, it's running pretty decent now. A whole lot better than it was before. Whole lot better. And I'm actually using, at the moment, the onboard graphics, the what was it? The Radeon HD, or excuse me, Radeon 3000 graphics. ATI Radeon 3000 graphics. So the thing is that I think the motherboard has a 880G North Bridge, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, like I mentioned, motherboard that's in here now is very similar to the one that's on the Plexi, minus some overclocking features and that parallel ATA port, as well as the lack of some USB 3 ports that the Plexi's motherboard has. But yeah, so all I gotta do is do a little bit of, I guess, tidying up here, do some updates and things like that to Windows, and got a piece around here to stick in this bay right here to cover that hole up. Yeah, something like that, but I'll get that figured out. But anyways, I think that wraps up for this video. So that was the neighbor's computer, updating it from the horrible Pentium D to a better setup that at least will not act as a space heater when the CPU is at 100%. I mean, that Athlon II dual core, what is it, 240E or 245E? Let's see here. Oh no, excuse me, it's a 220. So the Athlon II 220 processor that's in there right now runs a whole lot cooler, and dare I say it, probably runs faster than the Pentium D. For sure. I mean, the system is definitely running much better now with, you know, that CPU as well as the SSD. As you can see, solid state disk device. Now apparently the file copying utility, like it usually does, I have to figure out what's going on there, but anyways, I'll figure that out off camera. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Well everybody, that wraps up for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to CoopComputer channel, and be sure to tick the bell, that way you get notified of new video posts. Also, I recommend following CoopComputer Company on Facebook. A link is in the video description. In addition to computer tech videos, I have a second channel, CoopCompMTDX. Links are available at the end of this video. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching and your support.